All right, we are starting off week 1 for our pre-calc class. Here's just a rough idea of what our schedule is going to look like specifically for this week, but it'll probably stay the same for the rest of the weeks as we finish out this school year. So Monday you'll get a new video lesson, some worksheet for practicing the new content. Tuesdays there will be some Google Hangout time slots. They're only half an hour for right now. There's 3 different sessions. You can feel free to log on to whichever ones you need. If you want to log on to all 3 just to see what other classmates are having trouble with and seeing if you have the same questions, that's fine. If you don't feel like you need to log on for that at all, then you're totally fine with that as well. So I will be posting a link for that Google Hangout, and we'll kind of judge based on Tuesday and the response what that looks like going forward through the rest of the week and the weeks to come. Wednesday you'll get your second new video lesson, some more practice problems and worksheets as well. And then Thursday or Friday, kind of depending on the week, will be another opportunity for you guys to log on for a Google Hangout. We'll probably make the Thursday or Friday days a little bit longer, maybe an hour session, and maybe we can kind of figure out if it's the morning and the evening ones that work best, or maybe the afternoon one, whichever session works best for everyone, right? As always, you guys can feel free to email me with any questions that come up. Some of the questions I can do my best to answer over email, but sometimes if it's like specific help with a math problem, it's easier for me to just show you that. So a lot of times Google Hangout will be easier for that stuff. So just let me know if you have any questions. The other thing I want to address too, and these are questions that have been addressed by multiple people. Mr. Bruce and Mr. Platt have answered these in various forms. You should have received an email from Mr. Bruce earlier this week. So the 2 main questions are mandatory and the grading for the next couple weeks. So these responses are from Mr. Bruce. He said you're going to get out of it what you put into it. So you will need to make the choice regarding the importance of your education. Our teachers will provide the lessons and information to you. You must decide what to do with that information. My recommendation is to remain on task and do the work. Okay, so that's what Mr. Bruce is suggesting. I obviously suggest that as well, especially for those of you that will have a math class next year. So whether you are taking personal finance or AP Calc or statistics, if that's still offered, or if you're going into a college math class, or even some of your CTE classes that have math involved with it as well. If you take 5 months off without doing any of this practice, that is going to really hurt you in the fall when you have to start getting back into the rhythm of what school looks like. Also, the other thing too is because SATs have been postponed for you guys until the fall, if you take a whole bunch of time off without practicing anything, you're really going to be struggling as well to practice and review all of that content for SAT. Okay, so some of the stuff that we are reviewing is a little bit more advanced, but you're still using those core algebra concepts that you're going to be tested on in the SAT. So don't just blow off these next couple weeks and then just to kind of extend your summer in a sense. Make sure that you're putting in the time and practicing that now. You don't need to overdo it. Okay, really just focus on the learning and getting the concepts down. This type of learning with it being online, you can kind of go at your own pace. So if you're feeling really confident, you only need to do a few problems, that's fine. If you need more time practicing and you have to rewatch the videos a few times, do extra practice problems, then take that time to make sure that you're understanding and you're comprehending the material. Okay. The other question with grading kind of goes hand in hand. We're in kind of a unique circumstance right now, so it's going to mainly be credit for the work that you're doing and kind of for the work that you've done too in marking period 3. So you will not receive a numerical or a specific letter grade for these couple weeks. I know some of you are really frustrated with that. Others of you might be really relieved with that as well. Regardless of your feelings towards that, take the time to really just focus on the learning. Okay, don't get so caught up with the grade and how many points you're getting, what your final grade's going to be with. You have this opportunity now to just kind of focus on the material. So take advantage of that. And if you have any further questions with that stuff, or if you're questioning kind of where you're at with your grades, if you're going to get credit for this semester or not, just email me, and if I don't know the answer, I'll find out the answer for you, or I'll point you in the direction of who to contact for that. Okay, so just kind of some overview with those things. We are going to get started with your lesson. So we're hopefully going to get through 2 different units, systems of equations and matrices, and then after this we'll actually intro into calculus, so looking at limits and stuff like that as well. So solving systems of equations, hopefully some of this stuff is a review. This little bit of video is just going to be the intro to that. And then on Wednesday, you guys will see a little bit more advanced concepts for solving systems of equations. So for what we've been dealing with, it's only been 2 equations. We will look at 2 or more equations later this week using the same variables. Okay, so if one equation has x and y, then the second equation also needs to have x and y. Linear system, set of 2 or more equations with the same variables, and then your solution is whatever value you get for those variables, and that solution has to be true for both equations. There are a couple ways that you can look at solving systems of equations graphically. We will not look at that one because a lot of you don't have access to a graphing calculator. Some of them, if they're linear systems, that's pretty easy for you to graph a line. But there's some other types of equations that aren't linear equations, and you won't be able to graph those without a graphing calculator. Okay, so just know that that one we probably will not deal with too much right now. Substitution method is when you solve for a specific variable and then you plug it into the other equation. Elimination method is where you're adding, subtracting equations in order to get a variable to cancel out. And then matrices, this last one, you guys probably haven't dealt with too much. You might have seen a little bit in Algebra 2, but we are going to look a decent bit in this unit on matrices and what those look like, how to add, subtract, multiply the matrices, and how they connect to systems of equations. Solving systems of equations, we just did that. Okay, so the next slide, categorizing systems by names. So main thing that we're going to look at is your number of solutions. If there's one solution, that means that there's lines that intersect. Okay, and this type of name is going to be consistent and independent. So they're only intersecting at one point or one value. Parallel lines, okay, parallel lines never cross or never intersect. So those are going to be 0 solutions, and it's going to be called inconsistent. And then coinciding lines, that means that when you're solving them, they end up being the exact same line. That is going to be infinitely many solutions. If they're the exact same line, any number on that line is true. Consistent and dependent is going to be the name of that system. Just so that we know, sometimes when you are solving parallel lines, if you get a solution that says -1 equals 2, any numerical value statement that's untrue, okay, obviously -1 does not equal 2, that means it's a parallel line. For coinciding lines, if you get a number that's equal to that number, so that is a true statement, that's going to be kind of your hint to tell you that those lines are coinciding lines or that they're the exact same line. So just kind of some extra hints there as we work into solving these. Okay, so solving a system by elimination. This is one that we're going to practice a decent bit. You use the multiplication property of equality to create additive inverses for one variable. This means multiplication property that you can multiply a system by a number, but if you multiply by that number, you have to multiply every single term by that number. Okay, and hopefully that will allow you to cancel out terms by adding them together. Okay, additive inverses means like if you have like a -2 and you're adding 2 to that value, those are additive inverses. Okay, they're kind of opposite of each other, and that's going to actually cancel out to 0. So that's what we're looking for when we do this elimination process. Okay, once you get additive inverses, you're going to add the systems together and then solve for the variable. Normally you'll get an equation for a variable, and then you're going to use substitution method. and plug that equation back in to get a value for the second variable. So let's look at an example with this. Okay, we're going to look at this example, and just kind of as a reminder, you guys can go ahead and pause the video if you need to keep writing down some of the notes on the previous slides, or if you want to try some of these examples on your own, feel free to do that and just kind of try them first. So we have 3x minus y equals 7, and then another equation of 2x minus 5y equals 9. My goal is to try and get one of the variables to cancel out. Okay, so right now I typically am going to look for whatever variable has a constant of 1 in front of it. So that means I'm looking at this variable here of y. So I want to try to get the number in front of y to be the additive inverse, or the opposite of the number with y down here. So I want to try to get that number to be a positive 5. In order to get that to be a positive 5, I would need to multiply this entire equation by a negative 5. So that's what I'm going to do. So my top equation here will switch to a negative 15x plus 5y equals negative 35. You are allowed to multiply the equation by a number as long as every single term is multiplied by that number. My second equation, I don't need to do anything with that to change it around, so I'm just going to rewrite it. And now that I see that I have a positive 5 and a negative 5, they're additive inverses, opposite of each other. I'm going to add these equations together. So I have negative 15x plus 2x will give me a negative 13x. This will just simplify to 0. Those are going to cancel out, so I don't need to worry about those. And then negative 35 plus 9 will give me a negative 26. So now I'm going to go ahead and solve for x. Divide both by negative 13. So I get x equals 2. So that's one part to my system. Then I need to plug that into either one of the equations in the beginning and get a value for y. So I'm just going to plug it into my first equation. So I have a negative y equals negative 1. Divide both sides by negative 1. So y equals negative 1. So x equals 2 and y equals negative 1. Your solution we typically write as an ordered pair. So we would have 2 comma negative 1. Those two values are true for both equations. Okay, we're going to do some more practice problems with this, so if you're feeling a little overwhelmed, don't worry, write this down.